No, just the top.
Yes.
Do you need an agenda?
Oh, we don't have a revised one.
I think it's been. Okay.
All right, Eileen has one.
Do you want one? You sure?
If you have
She has an extra.
I have an
Yeah.
I made 20. I'm going to put them on the back. Or something. Okay. But I should actually put one on top for me. All right. Ready? Good evening. Welcome to the special meeting, the closed session of the Board of Directors of the Kensington Police Protection and Community Services District. Today is Thursday, July 13th, 2017. I'm Board President Rochelle Sherris-Watt, and I will now take roll. Vice President Natoli?
Present.
Director Hassai?
Here.
Director Welsh?
Here.
And Director Cordova has resigned from the board, and therefore we are only 4 members. The eagle-eyed will notice that our agenda was updated, so we must announce that the closed session will include a discussion on whether we can add items to our agenda due to urgency. This will be voted on, and if with a 2/3 majority, the Brown Act will allow us to discuss an updated item. We will now take public comment. There being none, we will simply welcome future Reserve Officer Kevin Ferreira. So, hello, thank you for attending. We'll introduce him to all our staff and members of the board, but I move that we adjourn into closed session.
Second. Do we need that?
All in favor?
Aye.
We're good? Okay. I'll give you mine. I have no idea. Okay, okay. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the open session of the Thursday, July 13th, 2017 meeting of the KPPCSD. I'm Board President Rochelle Sherris-Watt. I will now take roll call. Director Welsh?
Here.
Director Hassai?
Here.
Vice President Natoli?
Here.
Due to the resignation of Director Vanessa Cordova, we are now temporarily a 4-member board. From closed session, we voted 4-0 to consider the item that was brought up for some urgency, but we have nothing else to report out. It was fell into category A.
Mind saying what that was?
Well, our potential litigation.
Okay.
All right. We now will take public comments for items not appearing on the agenda this evening.
Hello, my name's Simon Brofman. I live in Kensington. I have a very quick question. Literally across the street from the public safety building, AT&T's been doing some work. They removed the cement sidewalk and put in tar. Do you know who's responsible for making sure we get a sidewalk again? Okay.
I'll take that responsibility.
Yeah, but do you know, was there an agreement or anything in place?
No, I don't even know the job that AT&T is doing there.
Yeah, because they've been, as well as Comcast, there are all sorts of people that are changing cables and upgrading cables, and my understanding, this was part of that process. So it maybe has happened other places as well. I just want to make sure we have a follow-through. Thank you very much.
Oh, we have instructions here. Mabry Benson here. I want to say to this board, I'm happy that I haven't had to say it before because you've had enough meetings that your meetings have not gone on very long. But at the At the last meeting, when you voted to extend the meeting, you voted to extend until the close, till business was finished. I think that is wrong. You should extend for a definite time period, because extending for an indefinite period is, we'll say, a classic way of conducting business after everybody's gone, and I'm not suggesting that you've done it. But I think in politeness to the citizens and the older citizens and the people who have to drive a long way to work, you should vote for 15 or 30 minutes and then just say, that's it. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Carl Kruger. As most of you probably know, the fire board last night decided not to vote on the lease agreement. There were 20 people in the audience, and most of them spoke against the lease agreement because people do not understand how one district gives money to another district. And then we listed it as a lease agreement, and the fire board did. And then the fire board was talking about this is really common area expenses that ought to be reimbursed. And as I told you a month ago, I added up 1 year's common area expenses, and they were about $14,400. And police occupies, depending on who you listen to, between 1/3 and 40% of the building. Now, I'm asking you for a number of things. Number one, I would like you at the next meeting to rescind the lease agreement. Notify the fire board, and then ask the fire board to put up 2 people, and the police puts up 2 people, who then will look at what the common area expenses are, and then look at what portion of the building is occupied by the police, what portion is occupied by the fire department, and then see what's common area, and then come up with an agreement. You cannot have $14,400 in expenses and charge their police district $35,000. I told you a month ago I was very disappointed that you voted for it. Apparently the fire board last night showed more common sense by deciding not to vote on it. So someplace along the line, I would like you to give me an answer what you're going to do about it. Thank you.
Celia Conkus. I'm here just asking a question for Jim Watt, who was unable to be here tonight. And I apologize, I haven't had a chance to really look through the agenda. So the question he asks is, has the district made a lump sum payment for PERS and OPEB in order to receive the full discounted value of an early payment? These payments are due this month.
Yeah, that's part of the budget discussion. But
Okay.
I can answer the question, though. The UAL payment was made, and it turned out to be $100,000 less than had been initially budgeted. The new actuarial report had not been received yet, so Debbie was working off of dated information, which is why the number was off that much. The reason for the lesser amount is that we made a prepayment last year of $97,000, plus the 7% that we didn't have to pay on that amount resulted in about a $100,000 decrease in the amount due this year.
I think I'm going to have to get that information.
The
answer is yes.
So yes. So the OPEB question, we have not paid that yet. I haven't received the information yet.
Is it going to be too late to pay that by the end of this month?
I would hope not.
Because I assume that it has to be paid.
If we need to make a special run, we'll make a special check run.
Oh, but actually, that payment should have been made then by the end of June, because that's the end of the year. But
I need a memo in order to just issue checks, and I've not been instructed to issue it, so if I need to make a payment post haste, please let me know, and I will make sure that gets done.
thank you. I have discharged my obligation to ask the question.
I'm Stephen Simran. For 30 years, I've lived across the street from the safety building, so I have a couple of comments to make relative to the safety building. First of all, I'm disappointed that the board has not put anything on the agenda regarding what financial commitment the board is prepared to make to the proposed new safety building. I know, having attended last several fire board meetings, that they're waiting to hear from you. And based on my brief review of Next Door Kensington, I know a lot of your constituents are eager to hear what you have to say about that as well. So again, I am disappointed in the board for your failure to bring that up here. The second point I want to make is that the proposed design, which was discussed fairly extensively at the fire board's meeting on the 24th of June, calls for the elimination of 3 parking spaces on site that are currently available for the public safety building. And the new design would eliminate those, which means that there would need to be 3 more either police or fire or public members of the general public who have business at that building having to park on the street. And as I said, having lived across the street from that building for 30 years, I know that that has a very substantial impact on myself, my family, and my neighbors. And I can say, at least speaking for myself, and I believe for my neighbors, that there will be substantial opposition to any plan that calls for the elimination of parking places. So I just wanted to put that on the public record at this time. Thank you.
Ashley, I would like to just give a small comment in response. First of all, I fully appreciate the concern about parking, living as I do so close to the Calusa Circle and having to deal with things like the farmer's market there. But my sense of that Saturday meeting was that the fire department is not moving forward at this point with its plan, so we really don't have anything to respond to except the way we responded at that meeting. And my suggestion at the end of the meeting was that maybe we should talk first about the pros and cons of staying with the building we currently have, and if the answer is we can't do that and we have to go to another project, then we go to, or another approach, we go to the other approach, but we have to first fully consider that option and be convinced that it won't work. So my sense was the fire board was going to be thinking about that, and I do hope to be talking with some fire board members myself and seeing if we can agree on an approach to this that will be one which seeks consensus in the community about the best way to go.
Hi, thank you for being here. A lot of people don't know you all don't get paid, and you spend a lot of time, and I appreciate it. And I'd like to back up Carl Kruger's request that you reconsider the resolution which you made passing the lease. But I'm going to do it for a different reason, which you've heard before from me, and that is that we are one town. We have one set of taxpayers. The one set of taxpayers is paying on both ends, both the safety building and the lease end. It's foolish. I think you should go back to the concept of the $1 lease, and I think you should stick with it. What are they going to do? Throw you out? I don't think it's happening. So I say we are one town, and we stick with the $1 lease. Thank you.
Pat Gillette. I want to echo Carl and Linda's comments and urge the board to reconsider the lease that you approved at the last meeting for the same reasons that they've articulated. I thought that Carl's idea of having some kind of a joint committee come up with what would be a reasonable amount, if any, that should be paid in rent is something that we should think about. And I also want to say that I think the concept that Linda has presented to the board and to the community a couple of times now of One Kensington is something that we should embrace on the police side as well as the fire side. And I was really happy to see here, because I was at another board meeting last night, that the fire department actually seemed to do that, to hear the concerns of the community and of the police district. So I'm hoping that you will act in the same way that the fire district did and respond to the community. It would be really nice to have some kind of a public discussion so we could hear from you all in terms of how you think about these issues. It's really a little bit frustrating to sit in the audience and not be able to understand what you were thinking when people get up here and make comments. So perhaps you can put something on the agenda as Carl suggested. Secondly, I am very hopeful that there will be a public discussion regarding the public safety building. I understand that the fire district may be reconsidering, but I don't think that this board should be in a reactive mode. I think we should be in a proactive mode, and we should be thinking of solutions and not waiting for someone else to suggest the solutions to us as to how we can have a public safety building that serves both districts. Because if you go back to the concept of One Kensington, then we should be working together, not waiting for someone to say, this is what we decided, or this is what we propose. There's no reason why we can't have a full discussion or have a joint meeting with the fire district and have a full discussion of both boards, by both boards, of what the best solution is for the public safety building. Thank you.
A. Stevens Delk. I came not to bury the board, but to praise it. I thank you for the rewording on the agenda, in particular that about public comment, what can be said and when. I think I now got that. And I thank you especially for the last sentence. It's so much better than ending with the pursuant to section 5030.41, the District Policy and Procedures Manual. As I have pointed out last year, following a review of meetings, the average time for each speaker has been about 3 minutes, with few going over 4 minutes, and almost nobody going over 5 minutes. And I would also like to compliment you for including the statement about the availability of the listening devices. In the package the district bought last fall, there is something called an ADA signage kit, which consists of a laminated card and a window sticker that says listening devices are available at the site. To be in compliance with ADA, it is supposed to be posted. They're in the back room in a folder with the sound equipment thing, so I think they should go up. And I do have one suggestion, that when you post something on the website, such as the agenda under latest news, that you indicate that it is for the regular meeting as well as the special meeting, because that's what people are interested in. So it's just a change on that website. Thank you very much.
Further comments? All right. Friends, Romans, countrymen. Sorry, waiting to quote Shakespeare all day. Any comments from the board? Go ahead.
No.
All right. I just want to remind everyone that the Finance Committee is not meeting this month, and the next scheduled meeting is August 30th. Also, that if you are interested in the item 12 is going to move into item 10 so that we are able to let staff go home slightly earlier. So just so that you know, I'll announce that again when we get there, but in case you were waiting for a specific item. Comments from Chief of Police, General Manager? Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to make a brief comment regarding some past resolutions that were passed. Resolution 2017-09 and 2017-10. And in the documents that I submitted to the agenda, I made a statement that those resolutions were passed on June 8th. That's actually incorrect. The correct date that they were passed was April 27th, and I just wanted to put that fact on the record.
Okay. Any further comments? Okay. All right. It is my privilege. Chief Hull is going to give the oath of office to our newest reserve officer, Kevin Ferreira. No.
My name's Kevin Ferreira. Happy to be here today. Thank you, board members, and thank you, members of the public. I look forward to serving you.
And we're happy to have you here today. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, right now I'm going to administer you to the oath of office. Would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? Yes, sir. I, Kevin Ferreira.
I, Kevin Ferreira.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend.
I will support and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The State of California.
The State of California.
Against all enemies.
Against all enemies.
Foreign and domestic.
Foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith.
I will bear true faith.
And allegiance to the Constitution.
And allegiance to the Constitution.
Of the United States.
Of the United States.
And the State of California.
And the State of California.
I take this obligation freely.
I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation.
Without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well.
I will well.
And faithfully discharge.
And faithfully discharge.
The duties upon.
The duties upon.
Which I'm about to enter.
Which I'm about to enter.
And during such time.
And during such time.
As I hold the office of.
As I hold the office of.
Reserve Officer for the District of Kensington.
Reserve Officer for the District of Kensington.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
You can't leave before you get the hardware.
I'd like to present you with the badge. Welcome you into the
Thank you and congratulations. We are delighted to have you join us. The board now would like to recognize the work of an outstanding community volunteer, Park Grounds Committee member, Charlize Danielson. So Director Welsh will make the presentation.
We have a little something for you. You may want to come up and get this. Yeah, come on up.
Look, no, we have, more is coming her way. We just didn't.
It's the, the sentiment that counts. Right. So I met Charlie when we started our work on the Ad Hoc Park Grounds Committee. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I just knew there was a problem with fire hazards here in the surrounding terrain. And Charlie and a few other folks were very much interested in doing some work to insulate this building and the grounds as much as we reasonably can against wildfires, because we run into that problem every once in a while. I learned so much from her. She works at the Native Here Nursery in Tilden Park, and she's managed that operation for quite some time, as I understand
Yeah,
it.
I tried to retire, but it didn't take.
They won't let her. You know, they keep quitting, and then, you know, we got to have somebody to run the place. She is a wonderful expert on well, I think vegetation in general, but California native plants, and especially the native plants in this locale. And so a lot of the work we did with the vegetation out here was not only learning how to, prune the vegetation so that you're minimizing the chance of a fire come, but also learning about what the vegetation actually is and how most of it is just a bunch of invaders that, you know, we need to fight against. I learned a tremendous amount from her. She put in a tremendous amount of time, as did, you know, all the other members on that committee. Katie's here, Peter's here. Dan O'Brien is not here. He was one of the original people working. We had Mabry turned out, I think, 1 or 2 times. I turned out a few times until I hurt my back. Who am I missing? Gretchen. Oh, yes, of course. And there were others that came here and there. It's been
And Ray Barraza.
Ray Barraza.
Yeah.
There were others.
First year,
Even, I think, Lisa Corona, I think she filled out one of those sheets that we had. We had these little, you know, liability
And
sheets.
Peter Conrad, when he was running.
Okay,
helped
continue.
get rid of the
Speech.
The pampas grass. Yeah, it was interesting. I've resigned from the committee partly because I have so much to do at Native Here. And also I'm getting old. And the physical work, even though it's fun, it takes its toll. It's too bad that most of the people who have participated in this are senior citizens. And one of my disappointments is that younger people did not come out to do the physical work and often looked at us like we were crazy. But today, this week, I noticed the regular maintenance staff has pruned the shrubbery around this building well below the eaves, which, when we started, you couldn't see out those windows because the shrubbery was right up to the roof, which is one of the parts of this building that has wood in it. So one of the points, as well as making the area around here safer, was also to demonstrate how you can make your own home a little safer without pulling out everything you've been watching grow for years. You can just prune it, maintain it, and that's what we've been doing. I don't know how many dumpster loads we filled, and many. And there is a dumpster key, which I turned into Lynn, so if somebody else wants to help Peter continue this work, just ask Lynn for the dumpster key.
I want to say one more thing about something I've learned from Charlie. She kind of has had a very nice vision of what the Kensington Park should look like in the long run, a way to educate people about the natural stuff that we see in our environment here. Even the asbestos outcropping there. I mean, that could be something for people to...
Serpentine, state rock.
Serpentine, which has asbestos in it, sorry, I didn't say it right. The California state rock, but that's a natural occurrence, that outcropping there. That's an opportunity for education, and she has had a vision of, sort of making the vegetation in the park reflect as much as it can the native stuff that grows here. No, am I wrong?
Oh, I'd love to, if I had enough time, and hopefully somebody else will pick up that.
Well, we'd like to consult with you from time to time if we may, and I'll tell you what, you get one more free meal from me at the Bateau Eve if you play your cards right. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. I first met Charlie and her husband years ago when we were both belonged to institutions in Berkeley, and she was already a wonderful volunteer who benefited our community there. So we didn't even know we were both residents of Kensington for some time. So she helps the community in all sorts of places all around the East Bay. So thank you so very much for your dedication. Now we're going to move on to receiving an update on the progress of our dispatch change. Chief Hull, would you like to begin?
Well, first off, I'd like to say the change was established with very little glitches. The phones were repointed. The radios were reprogrammed. The main issue that we had to overcome was how to connect to the Albany Police Department so that we can use the new program called RIMS. That kind of went down to the 11th hour, and what they ended up establishing was a VPN connection. Now, the best I can explain this is that it is a secure tunnel upon which information can travel back and forth. And in the course of establishing that VPN, I would like to recognize the work and the sacrifice that was done by the Albany PD IT department, who worked beyond their normal hours to ensure that this occurred. As any project of this size, of course, it causes some stress when it comes down to the last minute, and I was in that vortex, but we all agreed and decided to give it a swing. And thanks to the hard work and the use of the Albany Police Department personnel, who all took a hand and part in ensuring this would succeed, I would just want to express how grateful I am. So right now, everything's working. The phones are repointed. The radios are working. We are still do not have the fiber optic cable laid down from AT&T at this point. I've been in conversation with AT&T personnel, and the best they can tell me is that it's close. So we are still operating right now with the VPN connection, and I will be ready to call it a day as soon as we get the fiber optic cable up and work out any bugs that may come.
Well, you would like to recognize the Albany PD IT department. We would like to recognize you because the tremendous dedication and work that you issued for us to make this transition smooth. So we got you a little cake. And so I'm sure I'm sure our constituents will help us, as citizens will help us share it. And so all right. We will continue. Item 9, we're going to just quickly review changes that were made at the June meeting on the 2017-18 budget. That appears on page 42 of the agenda. General Manager Constanteros, if you would like to talk.
Well, the board did approve the budget. There were some changes. There were, I think, 10 changes. And Debbie is here to answer any questions or review the changes if the board would like.
Would you mind, Debbie, just quickly reminding us of the changes we authorized?
I highlighted what I remember I changed. If somebody sees something else, yell. All right, the salaries were changed. Huh? Oh. Okay. The salaries were changed per the agreement to make that step 2 effective October 1st. And that changed further in that same section, police salaries and benefits. It changed to account 523, which is Medicare. I guess it just changed Medicare. And the PERS, both the employee and employer share in relationship to that. We had quite a discussion about breaking legal up, and I listened to the minutes and tried to make some sense of, there was a lot going on, but this is what I ended up with, and if you aren't happy with that, we can change it. Legal/consulting police, I moved the portion of what was in 830 that applied to police to this section. That's the 33,200. And I'm going to skip out of order and just draw your attention to where the rest of the legal is. So in 830 is still legal district, which was that original breakdown. I think I did a little rounding just to make it come out nice for the new attorney. And then in park buildings and improvements, that's been changed for two things. One, we brought it up to the 300,000, discussing that we did not spend the 50 in fiscal year 16-17, and then that 7,320 is the legal related to that, to those contracts. Okay, back on the first page of the budget, community center repairs we lowered by a little bit, figuring if we're doing major stuff, we don't need to do little stuff. And district salaries at count 808, I made a small adjustment there. I had not carried through the CPI on that piece of the salary, and that changed also 809, which is the payroll taxes on that. We talked about legal. The police building lease obviously went from the $1 to the $35,468. Miscellaneous expenses board, actually part of 830, I should clarify, part of 830 went there, and that was for the board, was it training or something of that nature? All right, so those are the changes on the expenses. If you go to the revenue section, I changed the actual estimate for account 409. That was the unexpected 143,777 that we got in. I went ahead and put that in. But on the projected side, the measure G is adjusted by the actual CPI. I don't know if it's CPI, is it? But the increase that we're getting. Supplemental workers' comp, account 419 is lowered because we have Stephanie back. And so we won't be receiving the workers' comp reimbursement. Taxes and license, we now know the number is 37,503, so that's been changed. And then per the discussion for accounts 448 and 448B, those have both been lowered to what we expect. On projected revenue and expenses, all the numbers, of course, flow through, but I wanted to just draw your attention to, I fixed the math with the 448A and B so that those reflect and the totals are correct. On that same page, and we'll get to it on the next page, but the cash carryovers for 16-17 have been increased, and that it is in the cash projection page, but really what those changes are is the 140,000 that we got in for the asset forfeiture and the 50,000 we won't be spending in 16-17. So those increased. And on the second page of that, the community center building upgrade has been increased to 350 for the committed funds. And then I don't know if anybody cares, but the cash then just reflects those changes I talked about in May and June to bring us to that number.
Great.
Any questions?
Any further questions?
I have a quick question. I thought we had discussed somewhere about $5,000 for community outreach somewhere, and I don't see it. Maybe I'm just missing it.
I think we took away something. If you go to the detail, I think it's there. Didn't we take something out of the website and add something else?
Yes.
Which account number was that?
594.
Thank you.
Okay.
We ended
I believe that I
because we were
changed the
able to reduce the website cost for the upcoming year, and then, so I think it.
Oh,
resulted in a
you can
slight
see,
reduction
you
of
can see I screwed up the page. It doesn't have any lines. I didn't realize that. No, 594. Okay, 594 is Website maintenance dropped to 3,000, and community outreach is 5,000.
Okay,
So it didn't change, but the detail is different.
thank you.
Okay. This one needs lines. I can make that prettier. Any other questions?
None from me? Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay.
And maybe it'll be better if I wait and do it on the consent calendar because it's items C and D, but it does figure in on the account 448A. Oh, my name is A. Steven still, forgot that. You lowered that projection from the 112,000 to 90,000. I have a spreadsheet that, based on the the 4-month cycle that's Bayview is in, we've now gone through 5 of those, and it's pretty consistent that each quarter we get in total gross franchise fee 31,000. So the amount for then a year is going to be 93,000, and then if you add in a 3% cost of living increase that happens, I think that that number is going to be closer to 96,000, not 90. And I'll give you my spreadsheet, and then I will, when we talk about the consent calendar, I'll read my little thing that tells where I think the problems are in figuring out that franchise fee money.
I can go with whatever the board decides. I think that the 90 was, maybe was it Carl? It was somebody who stood up and said that they had, or maybe it was Jim, who had contacted the county and gotten our base that we're supposed to be calculating on.
Okay, well, then maybe I should be addressing this to the board, but I will give you my spreadsheet. And again, when I talk about the consent calendar, I'll tell you exactly where little glitches got put in.
Thank you. All right. We don't need to take any action on this, so we can, now we're going to move to item 12 on the agenda. We're going to review the appropriations limits for fiscal year 2017-18, and we welcome Bill Zanoni, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. He comes to us from PMG, and he prepared some of the documents for us included in the packet, so please.
Good evening. I'm Bill Zanoni with Renee Sloan Holtzman Sakai. You can't hear me? Okay. Sorry. Usually
all the way up for you.
Yes.
We're very concerned about the microphone here.
And this is on page 26 of your agenda.
So just a little background. In November of 1979, the voters in the state of California approved Proposition 4, which is an initiative that added Article 13B to the California State Constitution. That constitutional amendment is also known as the GAN Initiative. And what it did is it placed limits on the level of appropriations from tax proceeds for all government entities in the state of California. And that included the state itself, all the cities, and special districts. The first year that the appropriation limit was applied was back in 1980-81. Subsequent to that, in 1990, the voters approved Proposition 111, which made several amendments to the appropriations limit calculation and also changed the base year to 1986-87. The calculation is done each year, and each year the calculation is based on two factors: the change in the cost of living, California per capita personal income, and the change in population. For this district, for your district, you actually had a special election in November of 2014. The voters approved Measure V, which set your appropriation limit for a 4-year period, and the first year being fiscal year 15-16, the base was set at $3.7 million. Actually, $3,744,262 was the exact amount. So subsequent to that, each year in May, the State Department of Finance puts on its website, so it's available for everyone to see, the information that goes into this calculation. And the calculation for 17-18, it builds. So if you take the prior year, you pick up the change in population and cost of living, add that, and that sets your new base. So for 17-18, the change in California per capita personal income is 3.69%. And that's statewide, but that's the figure that we use. For the change in population, because you are a special district, we use the Contra Costa County countywide change in population, and that figure is 1.13%. So the calculation multiplies the 3.69% change in per capita income by the 1.13% change in population for the county, and that gives us a factor of 1.0486, or basically a 4.86% increase. We apply that 4.86% increase to your prior year's appropriations limit, which was $3,989,511, and that gives us the appropriation limit for the current fiscal year, and that number is $4,183,401, and those calculations, I believe, are all in your agenda packet. So that's the limit that you can't go above. That's the first half of the calculation. The next step then is to look at your proceeds of taxes, because that's what that limit is applied against. So for this entity, for 17-18, your most of your revenue is proceeds of taxes, and for 17-18, the proceeds of taxes anticipated is $3 million. It's a little bit over $3 million. We adjust that downward by the amount that's anticipated for major capital, and that gives us an appropriation subject to the limit of $2,765,000. So you are under your appropriation limit, which is what you want to be. This is a calculation that every governmental entity in the state of California goes through every year, and goes through typically at budget time. These calculations also should be included in your annual audit, so we'll recommend putting those in the back of the audit. So the action that's recommended this evening is that you adopt a resolution approving the appropriations limit of $4.1 million.
Thank you. Can I ask a question why the adjustment factor goes to 4 decimal places? Just a mathematical.
It's just what they do.
Okay.
They're very precise.
They are. Just it's out of line with the other.
Right. There were questions, or there have been questions about the where these figures came from.
Yes, from the community.
If you were a city, if you were an incorporated city, you would use that city's population. Because you're a special district, you use the change in the countywide population. And as far as per capita personal income, it doesn't look just at Kensington. It's California statewide, and that applies to all government entities.
Yes, we received some concern that we were changing the appropriations limit to be allowed to spend more. Actually, all we're doing is being mathematically correct. So this is no impetus for us to spend more on certain projects. It is merely to be accurate.
That's correct. This has no fiscal impact. It's just a calculation that every entity is required to go through once a year.
Yes.
Well, you have put your finger on a significant figure issue, but we don't need to go there. It's a scientific thing.
All right. Are there any other questions from board members or the community? Thank you, then.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right. Then I shall make a motion that the board adopt Resolution 2017-17, adopting and affirming the establishment of appropriations limit applicable to the district during the fiscal year of 2017-18.
Second.
I apologize, there is a mistake on the resolution page. It says year 2017-17, just with that correction made on page 28 of the agenda. All right, any further comment? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. All right, the motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much. All right. We're now going to move on to item 10, the consent calendar, and I'm going to ask if there's any items to pull. C and D. I will pull item E. All right, we'll begin comments then on item C, which is on page 9.
A. Stephen Stelk. I can address both C and D together. On the unaudited document on page 9, line 448A, franchise fee, the amount 89,469 is misleading. It does not actually reflect the amount of gross franchise fee received from July 2016 through June 2017, because as you will see on page 12, which is the transaction page for the franchise fee, and look at the first two entries, you'll see that $4,200 was received in July of last year, but immediately reversed. That is because accounting district or whoever does the books treats the money received in July as belonging to the previous fiscal year because it is based on Bayview's June receipts. This month of July, the district will receive about $4,000 from Bayview, which will be credited to last fiscal year. And I'm sorry I can't make that any clearer, but I will give you my spreadsheet and show that it keeps, you bump the last one up each time. So then what I was trying to say about the projection, and I did mention before that my spreadsheet will show that it's been pretty consistent that every 4-month period the district receives $31,000 from Bayview for the gross franchise fee. That's the 7% fee. It's been pretty consistent. It gets bumped up 3% at January, and because Bayview does things on 3 times a year, and we do things on a fiscal year, but it's not the calendar year, and Bayview always raise rates at the beginning of the calendar year. It gets real messy. But anyway, from my spreadsheet, I think that for fiscal year 17-18, you can expect at least 95,000, not 90,000 as you have. And again, I don't have a copy of my spreadsheet for everybody, but I'll give one to the board, I'll give one to the staff, and I maybe have 5. I'm really cheap.
All right, thank you. I think this is something that Vice President Natoli, as chair of the Solid Waste Committee, myself, and the general manager can get together and look at your spreadsheet and discuss whether we think that we should be making some changes to the budget or recommending changes to the budget. No, I understand, but she'll have the solid waste, I don't want to say influence, excuse me.
No, I'm happy to look
information
into it. And this morning, I met with Republic and the county. Republic handles the household hazardous waste facility that Kensington residents can bring their household hazardous waste to. And there are a couple of options that we might consider, and I think our solid waste committee might start looking into some various things. And one of the things that they mentioned as a possibility is to have apparently there's some companies that will pick up e-waste free, and we might host an event like that. Another option is to possibly have an annual household hazardous waste event. I was going to call it a dump, but it would be an event. Just off the top of his head cost, it would be about $50,000 to do that, but it would be having a large truck come and people coming and dropping off any household hazardous waste that they might have. So these are things that I just learned about today that we might want to look into with that too.
All right, wonderful. All right, I will make a motion that we approve the consent calendar.
Didn't you have an item?
I do, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull item E, and I'm going to move it after our discussion of item 11. It pertains to that. So I would like to approve the consent calendar items A through D and F through I.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. All right, we will now move on to item 11. We're going to receive a staff report and concerning a vacancy due to the resignation of Director Vanessa Cordova. Elected in 2014, she resigned in June due to health reasons. We want to thank her for her efforts in assisting in hiring our new GM, her passion for improving the technological aptitude of the district, its cybersecurity, and its accessibility to all residents. She was a supporter of maintenance and improvements in our capital assets and finding ways to control our expenditures, and she did heartily and cheerfully vote against tax increases. We wish her well. We hope her health improves and allows her to return to full activity. So now Ann Danforth has prepared the report that appears on page 21 of your agenda.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, in the event of an unscheduled vacancy, as we now have, the state government code provides a process, or 2 options actually, for filling that unscheduled vacancy. The first would be to simply appoint a new member of the board, and the second would be to call a special election. There is a deadline. Within 60 days, the board either has to make the appointment or call the special election. Board Member Walsh and myself have differed in our count of exactly when that deadline falls, but I think we agreed to compromise on August 25th, 2017. Because Board Member Cordova was in the second half of her term, the appointee would simply fill the remaining time on her term. If the board were to choose to call a special election to fill the vacancy, it would have to make that decision on or before the deadline. The next established day would have to be, the election day would have to be 130 days more from the day you call the, or more from the day you call the election. That would give you the choice of November 7th, 2017, April 10th, 2018, and June 5th, 2018. If the board neither acts to appoint within 60 days or call the election within 60 days, the decision goes to the Board of Supervisors. I would only point out that because of the passage of time, the constraints in either way are rather tight. If you want to appoint a board member, I would suggest that you put out the notice as soon as possible, inviting applications to give yourselves the opportunity to interview each candidate and make an informed decision, because the the appointment would have to be noticed to the public before you could actually make an appointment. I have attached the copy of the statute in full for further reading, and otherwise, if you don't have any questions, I submit the report.
Thank you very much. I would like to add that I received a quote today from Contra Costa County Board of Elections. Ms. Mina states that the approximate cost for a standalone election is $3 to $5 per registered voter. That is, I have cited the approximate cost of posting the vacancy in print media to be approximately $2,500. Comments?
What is the total cost at $3 to $5 per voter?
Well, we'll have to look at how many registered voters there are currently listed in Kensington. So.
Is it per registered voter or per?
Per registered voter, yes. About 4,000, thank you. I haven't looked, yep. So. Well, we are required to provide notice. Oh, what does print media mean? We're required to post the vacancy publicly. And if we did so in the same vein that we posted the general manager position in terms of putting the information out with the Bay Area News Group, it would appear on their websites and in their print media. That cost was approximately $2,000 to $2,500. So I just wanted to approximate that there probably would be a cost for us to, if we posted in that form. And then there's also, of course, free social media and other public postings that do not cost. So I'm sorry, comments need to be made at the microphone.
First, I'd like to say, Linda Lipscomb, Highland Boulevard, Kensington. First, I'd like to say I'd like to see you go the way of appointment rather than election to save money and to get it done. Second, you're only going to be looking for a Kensington residence, so you don't need to go to a full court press, put it in the Chronicle. You can put it into Nextdoor, you can put it on, heck, you can put it on Craigslist if you want. All you need is a couple of postings at a public place down on the kiosk, and you'll be looking for a Kensington resident. And given that we've spent almost a year with somebody governing this jurisdiction from Italy, I think it will be a refreshing change. I was going to bring up this whole thing with Vanessa Cordova and this, what I now consider a farce of her phoning in all the time. She says in this exit interview that she had that she was in daily conversation with the president of the board. And I don't know whether that's true or not. And certainly the timing of the publication of her rather extensive exit interview indicates that information might have been around, and she says that she was resigning, and she also says she wrote prior resignation letters. And I think the community would like to hear a little clarity about what that was all about. But let's put that to the side for the moment. My main point is, I think that you don't need to do advertisements in the Chronicle or magazines and all. This is a very local matter, and you can minimize the cost, and I think it will be well under $1,500. I remember when we did it, when Tony Lloyd passed away, and we were successful in getting a number of applicants, among which one sits on your board right now. So I'd like to see you go that route. The second point that well, I'll just leave it at that for right now, and hope that you'll proceed. Actually, I'm going to say it. I was going to wait. Dave Spath knows it's coming. I'd like to see Dave Spath appointed, and it's because he came in third in a multiple party race. He was third behind the two persons who won, and I'd like to speak for him and say that he's served our community well. He's thoroughly conversant with the issues in the community, and he's a person of the highest integrity and courage. So I'm plugging for him. Thank you.
I just want to, being the person who last applied for a position on the board, I want to correct one little thing that Linda said. It wasn't to fill the vacancy when Tony Lloyd passed away. It was when Mari Metcalf resigned. Yeah, just so nobody's confused.
I think there's some confusion. We're not talking about posting to the Chronicle. We're just simply, Bay Area News Group does have a base minimum. We would simply, I quoted what was probably going to be required by law. If it's less, that's wonderful, but I wanted to make sure that we met the minimal legal requirements, so, for posting.
We'll go for the bargain basement rate, right?
Whatever we, yeah.
Pat Gillette, and I would like some clarification as to whether it's required by law that we post with the Bay Area Media Group. I do not believe we did that when we replaced Mari Metcalf. So maybe we were out of compliance. I think given the multi-page spread about Director Cordova leaving in the Outlook, that everybody in the community probably knows that there is a vacancy on the board who reads the Outlook. So again, I don't think this is a matter of people who want to apply not knowing that there's a vacancy. I would urge you to follow that procedure because I do think that that is what would be best for the community at this time, rather than waiting for a special election, which will just take too long. It's been too long that this board has been governed basically by 4 people instead of 5, and I think we need to have a full board component for the very important issues that we're facing.
Anthony Knight. I'd like to get a clarification, please. In order to serve on the board, does one have to be a Kensington resident?
That would depend on the provisions of the establishment documents of the district. Normally, it would be required.
Well, we can confirm that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
The reason that I ask this is, does that mean that the person is a property owner? No. Does that mean that they can be a renter here? They have a lease? Or does that mean, as in the case of Vanessa Cordova, we didn't know what? She was physically living here under what kind of an arrangement? We weren't sure. I would like that really clarified.
Well,
who qualifies?
Well, you must be an American citizen or I suppose naturalized citizen, but you must be a resident of Kensington.
But what does a resident mean? Does that mean you own property? Is that
No,
make
it
you a
does
resident?
not.
Or does that mean you?
Actually, we had
You have a tent down.
we have a legal opinion that you could be, your intention, if you are a resident of Kensington or you intend to return to become a resident of Kensington, was the opinion issued previously by one of our legal experts.
Yeah, that seems honestly awfully vague. I mean, who knows what an intention is, and who knows when that intention would come to fruition?
Welcome to the law.
Can live. Well, somebody can live in Des Moines, and they intend to move to Kensington, and so they come and they apply, and you.
It does become difficult, but it does mean. So go ahead.
Well, difficulties are the province of our council.
Well, I am not the attorney who researched that issue, but
Can you? Could you do that?
I would only do that at the board's direction.
But the board directed that we get some clarity on that. That was an issue with Vanessa.
That would be a significant expenditure of district resources, and I have to say that the ambiguity that the board members have mentioned is very consistent with other definitions of resident in other areas of the law. It's always ambiguous, and it always turns on the intent of the person at issue. What is fairly clear is that you can't be a resident of two places, so you can't vote in two different jurisdictions.
Well, I'm sorry, that is not helpful.
Well, that's all there is.
Talk to your legislature about that.
I leave it to the community. I think this is a loose thread.
Well, I would like to, I'm sorry.
Do they have to be a registered? Come to the mic. Do they have to be a registered voter? I don't know.
Leonard Schwartzberg, do they have to be a registered voter?
I don't know the answer to that.
Maybe what we could do is, whatever written legal opinion we have, maybe our attorney could take a look at that and answer some of the questions that are answerable, such as that one. I believe the answer is no, you don't have to be a registered voter. You can be a renter. There's some basic questions that can be answered with clarity. There's some others that are, you can give the concept, but it's not really all that clear if you look at case law and that kind of thing.
And I'm sorry, I gave the wrong implication in saying it was a written legal opinion, other than it was conversation with our attorneys. And because they said so adamantly the law is ambiguous and it is the individual's intent to return, they did not recommend pursuing some kind of finding for us.
Okay. If I understood Pat correctly to be saying that we shouldn't go through the all of the hurdles to having an election, and rather that the board should appoint someone in order to get it done quickly. If I understood you correctly, Pat, I'm so delighted to be able to agree with you.
One little gloss on what I said. It sounds as though... All right, nobody really needs the microphone to hear me, but I will oblige. If you're going through the process and people are applying and they say, well, I don't live here, I live in Kansas, and I intend to come here, that may simply be a factor in your assessment of the candidacy. So let's not see how many angels are dancing on the head of the pin yet till it arises, because it certainly can be a factor in your consideration of an appointment. So I see no reason at this point to engage in that expense.
So I would like to make a motion. I would like to move that we go the route of taking applications and taking a board vote on filling the vacancy. And if I don't mind answering some basic questions, even in the notice, can be a renter, need not be a registered voter. Those things are nice to know. So if there's a simple way to sort of get some of those basic questions answered, why don't we do that? So that's the motion.
Okay. I'll second the motion.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Oh, we have a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mabry Benson here. It sounds like part of the process is having an application form, and I think the things that you just mentioned would be appropriate to have on the application form. If that's what you want, it wouldn't need to be in the advertisement necessarily.
Right.
I think that we're going to make a separate motion. So actually, we need to, go ahead, and we need to direct staff to.
I will make a suggestion, just to make sure that this process proceeds smoothly and without unnecessary delays, because it may take me some time to produce the answers that you're wishing for. Perhaps you could designate a person and it would have to be one person on the board to work with staff on the actual notice and specify what should be in the letter of interest, so that we don't have to wait for the next board meeting to identify what should be in the application.
Can I nominate Vice President Natoli to do that?
I'll second that.
All right. All right, well, all in favor, so Vice President Natoli will vote, work with staff.
Aye.
To establish and publish the written notice of vacancy. All right. Yes, we have a motion. So all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Go ahead, state the motion.
Were you able to get all that down, Lynn?
Yes. The motion is for Vice President Natoli to work with staff to draft and publish the notice of vacancy.
And to entertain applications to be voted on by the board.
No, we don't have to do that. What we have to do is first publish the notice of vacancy, and then we actually, that's our first step. So the appointment process comes when we.
The notice of vacancy indicates that we are going
that direction, but it doesn't. No.
Notice of vacancy, and then you do applications, and then you decide whether you're doing, whether you're appointing the board or just choosing from the, doing some kind of public appointment or doing it just within the board? I mean, what is the process that's going to be followed? Let's forget.
Well, my motion is for the board to entertain applications and take a vote.
That's what I thought. So are you voting on that?
Yes, it's the conclusion and recommendation on page 22 of the agenda packet. So it will notify of the process, we'll publish the notice of vacancy, and then, but the publication of this notice will not commit the board to make an appointment, but allows us to explore the appointment option. I mean, clearly the will and interest of the board is to appoint.
But that's what I'm not clear, and I thought that Lynn.
Yeah, I'm not clear either now that you said that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it's just
maybe Ann should. Can you explain this?
I can set forward some of the requirements which will in large part drive the process. The notice will go out and it will be posted at a minimum in 3 conspicuous places in the district. That's the bare minimum. And it will be posted at least 15 days before the board can make an appointment. I am recommending considerably more than 15 days to allow the board to interview the various applicants.
And we'll have to have a public meeting for that interview, correct?
Those interviews would have to be done publicly. If the board is overwhelmed by the amount of candidates and wishes to establish some process to winnow the number down, we could talk about that at a later meeting, establish a subcommittee or something like that. But for right now, I believe what the board seems to be interested in doing is authorizing Vice President Natoli to work with staff to develop an application that will set forth the requirements of all applicants, residents, and that sort of thing, and get that posted and otherwise put out there so that you can start accepting applications.
Okay, well, I just want to get clear on what you had in mind, Rochelle, because my intention was to, we're committing ourselves to go down this path. Now, maybe we don't get any applicants, or maybe some other thing gets in the way of us making the appointment, but if that occurs, we're going to be run past the deadline, we'll have to leave it up to the county.
Well, the other alternative is if you can't make a decision, and that would require 3 votes, before the deadline, you could also, at that time, decide to call a special election.
That's what I meant.
You're not foreclosing that option.
This is just the legal technicality of how it works. It's not what our intention is.
Fair enough.
That's what I meant to communicate, that if there was a roadblock, we are still able to call an election.
Hopefully without, actually, I remember when I was applying, there was a little bit of an impasse with 2 to 2 for a while. So that kind of thing can happen.
All right. So now I would like to return to item E in the consent calendar. That's page 4. We did. Yes, the motion passed. Did we continue? 4 to 0?
Yes, 4 to 0.
4 to 0. Page 14 of the agenda, it is the updated regular Finance and Park Committee meetings for the remainder of the calendar year. I would like to make one change to this, given that we are now considering appointing a new board member. Due to various vacations amongst board members and staff, I would like to move the second special the second regular meeting in August that is listed at August 17th to Monday, August 14th. That, because we will have a full complement of the board at that time, I would propose as our meeting to appoint. It doesn't have to be part of the motion, but I move to adopt this calendar for the remainder of the year.
I have only one question. So that would be a meeting that we're talking about appointments, right?
Yes.
There are certain things that can only be done at a regular meeting, so can we just
We can.
check that?
This can be done at a special meeting.
Oh, great, cool.
All right, any comments? So you'll see that the second August meeting was already moved forward by a week due to the fact that we would not achieve a quorum. But now that Thursday, August 17th, I would like to change it to Monday, August 14th. I do not know that we'll have a closed session then, but we'll see. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye. Yes.
Aye. No, the first meeting is August 10th, so it's actually only 4 days later. Our meetings will be quite compacted of the board, but you will see that the rest of our meeting schedule for the year for Parks and Finance and some of the meetings have been moved for holidays. It's all noted there. All right, moving on to any other questions? Item 13 on page 38 of the agenda. The board is going to review the All-City Management Services contract that provides the crossing guard services for our school children. I'm sorry, that's on page 38. Would the general manager like to introduce this, or I'm happy to if you don't want to.
We're recommending approval of the contract for $11,623, and it is included in the budget.
All right. Are there any questions or comments? If you're unsure, this is the KPPCSD has, for the last several years, provided one of the crossing guards that on the Arlington to allow children and transport across safely. So I will make a motion that we... Oh.
You just real quickly, what's the, one thing is to extend the contract term, correct? That's item 1. And item 17 is the other amendment, is that correct?
Okay.
And so what, we're changing the rate, is that what we're doing there? Just like people know what we're voting on, that's all.
We're renewing the contract for that term, for the one-year term.
Yes,
as well?
there's
There was a
rate
rate change.
Yes.
And what's from what to what?
That do you know when?
It's a basic CPI increase, so it's a nominal increase, but because the contract itself exceeds the general manager's $5,000 limit, that's why it has to come before the board.
So it's basically a cost of living increase, okay, thank you.
Yes. All right, I will make a motion that we amend and adopt the agreement between All City Management Services Incorporated and the KPPCSD providing crossing guard, school crossing guard services.
I will second the motion.
All in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Aye. The motion passes 4-0. All right. Our last item of the evening, excuse me, one second, is consideration of note-taking for meetings, our regular meetings of the KPPCSD. And if the general manager would like to introduce this item.
Yes, this item is for discussion at the board's discretion. There really are three main types of written minutes. The first type is verbatim minutes. The second type are summary minutes, which are summarize the discussion but do not include every word of the discussion. And the third type are action minutes, which summarize only the actions taken by the Board of Directors. The recordings can serve as minutes, but there are requirements on how they're preserved. So if the board decides to use the recordings as the minutes, we have to comply with those requirements. I think they include proper storage and in a smoke-free environment for a certain number of years. Also, on recording minutes, if they are the only source of minutes, usually there is some provision made in case there are equipment failures or there are poor sound quality, sometimes requiring a redundant set of recording. That's only in cases when they are the only set of minutes that are that you have.
Now, in your experience, our current policy and procedure manual requests summary minutes. We've been going a little bit more extensively than that. In your experience with various city councils, and do they normally adhere to summary minutes or action minutes, or is it a combination of both, or verbatim minutes?
Verbatim minutes tended to be the most common type of minutes some 30 years ago or so. And most agencies, but not all agencies, have moved to what is termed as summary minutes, where they summarize not only the actions, but the discussion that takes place and the reasoning behind the actions. Action minutes, where there's only action, are a little more rare. There are fewer agencies that have only action minutes.
Now, you may not know the answer to this question, but I'm wondering, in perusing different special districts and cities, I noticed that there was a delay. Let's say in Orinda, they will have, of course, the video projected very quickly, but there's some months delay in terms of having their minutes available, their written minutes. Do you know of any legal requirement in determining how quickly we must get our minutes to accessible?
I don't know. I don't believe there are. I think the requirement is reasonable, but that's subject to interpretation. I think a few months is probably unreasonable.
So is my understanding that we're going to continue to maybe explore this process and see, both as we adopt our new website and see how our new website should have searchable functions and findable features, and we'll then perhaps consider changes in our minutes if that.
I have a question, or the new website will have indexing for video so that you could track at what minute a particular topic is introduced to the video, like following the agenda. And we'll also have searchable agendas and searchable minutes. And I know we've adopted, the Finance Committee has moved to adopt, or to use, not adopt because it's already the procedure is to use summary minutes. And so we're seeing how the Finance Committee does with that. And I'm comfortable only once I think we're confident that the indexing and all that other stuff works, that perhaps the video becomes the record, and the summary minutes are also, of course, included as well.
And one option, of course, the board could have is to try a system for a period of time and see how it works and whether it's effective, and then reevaluate it at the end of that time. I will tell you there is a cost factor involved, especially in verbatim minutes, because they are the most expensive and the most time-consuming.
I just want to get some clarity here. I mean, I don't think what we're doing right now is verbatim minutes. I think it's a species of summary minutes. And, you know, there's no hard and fast way to do this. Sometimes summary minutes can be extremely detailed. They can be less detailed. So I don't really want to see us go away from summary minutes. I do think a discussion about how detailed is certainly fine to have. I know we had one before a couple months ago, and some folks in the public felt fairly strongly about wanting detail.
Well, that was a consideration of, I believe, action minutes, which I think.
Yes, when we were talking about action.
I think we're in agreement that summary remains the way to go. I mean, I personally, that's what we currently have, and I think that's fine. I think we can, you know, look at efficiencies and best uses of, you know, resources and how much detail is necessary, especially if, you know, over a period of time, the technology proves to be working well, the website, the indexing, the searchability. I think that will go a long way.
Well, my understanding is that the current minutes may not be verbatim, but they're close to that. They're
very detailed.
Very detailed. The summary minutes are not as detailed.
But I have to say, I think a number of folks in the community appreciate the detail. I think, you know, we could certainly calendar a discussion of this, but you can anticipate, I think, a lot of people supporting what we currently do.
I think we also, though, have asked Tony to look at the best, you know, use of operations, efficiencies, and resources, and that's, I think, what I gather this is partly coming from, so.
Well, okay, talking about minutes, I'm glad nobody likes action minutes, because in my review of past minutes from past years, the action minutes were useless. So I'm glad that people seem to also agree they're useless in trying to figure out what's happening. And I was going to request that if there were summary minutes, you have a timestamp to correlate it with the video. But Sylvia, you jumped the gun there and said something about an index, which is essentially what the time stamping is. Okay,
yeah.
Mabry had a comment at 9, wherever it is on the video, about her objection to action minutes.
Yeah, I think it's more like the discussion of minutes starts at minute whatever, and then you have this sort of, you know, 15-minute chunk that
yes.
you want to
Well,
about that issue.
I've had experience at some logging oral interviews, and you tend to get more detailed, but certainly the log at least gets you to the right topic, and then you can look it up. But no action minutes, please. So thank you.
When is the new website supposed to be up?
I don't know. Any?
We are waiting finishing touches, and so hopefully we'll be able to launch before
September?
Yes, absolutely before September, but I would love to be up by the 1st of August, so.
I would say don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If there's a feeling that the minutes are too detailed, then you certainly, as the board, have the authority and power to instruct the person taking the minutes not to be so detailed. The idea, at least to me, and I suspect to a lot of other residents of Kensington, that you would limit the ability to see what happened in detail at the meeting to searching the video, particularly if it just says, now's when the discussion of minutes took place, and I've got to listen to tons of things that may not be interesting because I want to just get down to the bottom. That, to me, is problematic for a lot of people in our community. There's already been some concern about transparency. I would caution you that by doing something that looks like you're limiting the public's access, the discussions that go on at these meetings would not be looked on favorably by many people in the community. I urge you not to do that. I think the solution is easy. If you think there's too much detail, ask there to be less detail by the person who's preparing the minutes. To go to the extreme of saying, no, we're going to not have minutes anymore, we're going to rely strictly on the video, and everybody in the community is going to have to scroll through.
We're not saying that.
Okay,
We're not saying that. It would be in addition to minutes.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So you could pick your forum.
Right.
Terrific. I'm sorry I misunderstood.
I mean, it might be less detail, but it would be there.
Yes. All right.
Linda Lipscomb, we just had this discussion. What brings it up now? I'd like to hear a little background on why this is coming up again. We all talked about it. Everybody.
I'm sorry, I don't want
We
to.
all talked about it. Everybody got up, got upset about it. The proposals were that, there was going to be just the little brief notations, so-called action minutes, and we just recently settled again on summary minutes. And so I'm just wondering why this is up in the air again.
We directed the general manager to look at efficiencies in the office administration, and he recommended this item for the agenda.
And it's not about going to action minutes. We're not saying that. We're not changing anything. It's going to remain summary minutes. It's looking at potentially less detail in conjunction with enhancements to the website that will be searchable, which people have been asking for a long time. So it's a combination of things happening, but it's not to go to action minutes. That's not.
Okay, then it doesn't need, then all that needs to happen is there needs to be an instruction from the general manager to staff to take minutes in a particular fashion. But this is scheduled as an item.
For discussion.
For discussion.
By the general manager with
the
The general manager asked for that item to be included for discussion.
All right, thank you. I'm against shortened minutes. I think summary minutes perhaps a little more brief. And the good thing about that is when you come in and you look at the last month's minutes or the last 2 months' minutes sometimes, if there's not enough detail, somebody can get up and say, you left out thus and such, or whatever the gloss has to be. So that's okay if we want it to be a little bit shorter than it is now and less like verbatim minutes. I think it's summary and I think it's fine. But there is an opportunity in the review of minutes and the approval and acceptance of them to enhance them if necessary. Thank you.
David Bergen. This brings up something that I've talked about a lot, to make things searchable, in that the minutes, the agendas are not searchable as they're processed now. And it sounds like we're going to make a change. And I think that's most important, because if it's searchable, you can plug in, you're looking for XYZ, and it'll come up, and then you can read that part. You'll also be able to cut and paste the minutes and use them as you wish. So I think that's a great idea. I'm glad that Tony brought that up again. Thank you.
Okay.
Marilyn Stolen. I just wanted to say that I am in support of going to summary minutes. I was one of the presenters a month or two ago. I had researched, 10, 15 different cities in the area, looked at their minutes, looked at what they wrote, and I presented some examples of how to do that. And I think definitely we have way too much detail, that we can use our resources better, but it takes a little bit of time to learn how to write in a succinct manner, and that's what came out at our last discussion, that it's a lot easier to say things in 100 words than to say it in 10, but I think I provided several examples of how to do that. And if anybody wants to see what's done in the modern world, they can just look at some of the minutes in the surrounding towns. They're out there to see. Sometimes it's a paragraph, and sometimes it's 4 sentences, but it gets the message across. And once you have a searchable video and you can find it, right now we don't, because now you'd have to spend several hours looking for something. But I found that when I looked at the towns and wanted to see a little bit more detail as an example, it was very easy to go to the video and see where it was broken out, because it was tracked to the agenda, and it saved a lot of time. So.
Anthony Knight again. I am one of those Kensington residents who would be deeply disappointed if the minutes were to become any less detailed than they are now. I think there's a lot of diversity in this community. There's a lot of richness in the opinions, and I think capturing it in written form is a secure and established way of preserving it. I have very little faith in electronic media. I see problems with it all the time. It has to be maintained, it has to be running, and I would much rather put my faith into a proven method as we currently have. Also, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but at the meeting where this was discussed before, I have never seen such unanimity on any subject as there was on this particular subject.
On the
of-
subject of action
I think today we got some really good unanimity.
Well, okay.
Tonight's meeting.
But there are a lot of people who haven't yet stood up and spoken. I see this as a watering down of the information, and I do see it as a transparency issue. The more detailed, the more transparent, the more ability there is to go back in the traditional way, in the way that people are used to, and to see what was said, and to see who said what, and how the issues were discussed.
Catherine, sorry, I will be better at this. Catherine Mercurio. I had to speak tonight because I, unlike all of you in this room, I don't come to meetings very often. No, actually, I'm sorry that I don't. But what I do rely on is getting my information from whatever resources I can find. I have to tell you that when minutes aren't posted right away, the video or the audio transcription ends up being a way of being able to get that information a little bit faster because the written word isn't there. So I've actually used that in the last few days trying to educate myself about what has been going on historically. So I would actually commend the board for coming up with this searchable website. I think that will be huge. I think that one thing we have to remember is that as much as we would all love very detailed written information, transcriptions of these meetings, the reason that our general manager is questioning it is because there must be an inordinate expense that is associated with taking very detailed minutes. And so I would assume that that is the reason that he is bringing this up. And if that is the case, then we, to be fiscally responsible as a community, have to hear what he has to say. So I agree, I don't want to see action minutes. I like the idea of summary minutes. I like what everyone's suggesting, that it becomes very subjective as far as how much detail that you put into those summary minutes. But I think we have to also hear what the general manager is trying to say, which is that he's looking at it because he's saying, and again, please tell me if I'm wrong, that there is a cost associated with it. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right, are we going to close the item?
She just inspired me to say something. And that is, if in fact there is a cost associated with it, if that's the motivation, then I guess we should hear what the cost is that's associated with the video and the written minutes, the various ideas. I mean, to just sort of discuss it in the abstract leads us to speculate, and we shouldn't be speculating, nor should you. So hopefully if that's what's driving this, then let's hear what it is.
I made a presentation in February. I did calculations for minute taking, and I approximated that our cost every year in staff time, at that time, we've since had cost of living adjustments and things, but at that time was $16,500. So please adjust that accordingly.
I also want to say it's not just the cost, it's the opportunity cost of what other things could be done during that time, you know, what other things could be done or not being done or whatever. I mean, it's more about efficiency and using talents well and other resources.
Well, bottom line is, nothing is going to change until we look into this more and we calendar and agendize another discussion about where we want to go if we want to make a change. So nothing's going to happen right now.
Leonard Schwartzberg again, and I just want to say that I am so delighted to be able to agree not only with Pat, but with Linda and with other people. It's just great. It really is. And I have a solution to the problem of the unlikely event in which you can't find a suitable candidate to appoint to the board and time is running out. I will volunteer to be appointed and to resign immediately upon being sworn in so that it will extend the time.
Well, thank you. for your generous offer.
I will confess I did not.
Yes. And legally, she is much too elegant to suggest any.
I like it.
But, too honest and too elegant. So I would like to make a motion that we conclude this evening's meeting. If there are no further comments, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion to
All right,
adjourn.
all in favor to adjourn?
Yeah.
All right, the motion passes, I assume, 4-0. Have a good evening. Thank you for coming.
Well, it sounds like it's going to be